thank you for joining me on the Get What You Want podcast, where getting what you want isn't always what you think it is. My wish for you is that this show will create an awareness within yourself of what you really want and the possibility of getting it. Let's go create. My guest today is Hale Dwoskin. Hale is the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Sedona Method, and the co-author of Happiness is Free and It's Easier Than You Think with Lester Levinson. He is one of the featured teachers in the book and movie phenomenon, The Secret, as well as a featured teacher in The Greatest Secret. He is also featured in the movie Letting Go. Hale is the director of training, chief teacher, and spokesperson of Sedona Training Associates, an organization created to promote the emotional releasing techniques inspired by his friend, mentor, and teacher, Lester Levinson. He is also as a founding member of the Transformational Leadership Council. That's a lot, Hale. Thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure.
I love when I have guests that have so many things that I can talk about. So it's really a pleasure having you here.
Oh, it's a pleasure being here with you.
I have to say, years ago when The Secret came out, it was very impactful in my life, and it's always been there. And I teach a lot of things in my own book and my own courses about just being positive and searching for evidence and how we can create anything we want in our lives. So tell me a little bit about how you became a part of The Secret, and then as well as a lot of these other things that you are involved in right now.
Well, sure. Well, I became part of The Secret because Rhonda Byrne came as a guest to one of the meetings of an organization that I was one of the founders of, something called the Transformational Leadership Council. And about 90% of the movie was filmed during one of our 3-4 day sessions. And she just took one of us at a time in a room, put us in front of a green screen, and interviewed us. And my interview was a little different. A lot of my friends who are in The Secret, the law of attraction is part of their core teachings, and it's only a small part of what we do. And Rhonda was actually more interested in the main thing that we do, which is focusing on letting go and discovering the truth of who or what you are, than she was in discussing The Secret. At the very end, she said, "Oh, before we stop, I need to ask you a question that will, so you can say something so you'll be included in the film." So the quote that I gave, which is "be for what you want as opposed to against what you don't want," became a whole segment of the film because of that. She then went back and looked for other people saying similar things from the interviews. So I ended up being a big part of her latest book, The Greatest Secret, because she spent after The Secret came out, she spent the next 14 years investigating letting go and discovering truth, discovering that inner core that we truly are, as opposed to all the things we look at on the surface. And in discovering that, she started feeling happier and happier and happier. She was already a happy person and a successful person. But this took it to a totally new level. And her level of suffering, which was already very low because of how positive she was, got to a totally new level of absence of suffering. And so the Sedona Method, myself and my mentor, Lester Levinson, ended up being a big part of her latest book, The Greatest Secret. And so that is the evolution of how I got involved in The Secret.
That's awesome. I love the idea of happiness. And yes. My husband and I were just having this conversation last night about perspective, how everything in our life is perspective. That's a huge part of what I teach is if you change your perspective, you change your reality. And what is happiness? Like everyone says, you hear people say, I'm happy, or like, I feel like I'm a genuinely happy person. Like my underlying mode of being is happy. And, I might have some bad days, or I may have something that knocks me down, but I would say that like, I really love the idea of happy. And so I think that that's kind of my foundation, but that's my perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about these different levels of happiness, that sounds pretty amazing. So explain to me a little bit, like,
Well, sure.
How would you define happy or happiness?
Actually, I have an unusual definition. Unusual to some people, but usual. The things that I talk about are very similar to what the other teachers in the Greatest Secret talk about. And that is that happiness is simply you being your true self, not your tendencies, not what you do, not what you have, not what you think about. But beyond all that, there is this presence of awareness or beingness that is shining from the core of your being. And it's what actually gives life to all experience, but it's also the source of happiness. And how that works is when we want something in life, wanting it actually creates a little unhappiness. To the degree that we want it, we feel more unhappy. So we get confused because one of the ways most of us experience happiness is when we finally get something we've been wanting. But that's a fleeting form of happiness. And the reason it's fleeting is because when you get something that you've wanted, all the thoughts and feelings about, oh, I must have this, temporarily subside. And the mind is quieter. It's more out of the way. And that happiness that is your basic nature can shine through more than it usually does. And then we get confused. We think it's in the person, the place, the thing, the new toy. But all of us have experienced that temporary happiness that comes from just the quieting of the mind that happens naturally when you achieve something or get something is fleeting. So after the new car smell wears off, the happiness we get from the new car starts to disappear. And then we start to worry about the car getting scratched. Or we start to look around and go, well, this car is great, but what could I get as my next car? And unfortunately, we do that in relationships. We do that in every part of our life, where we're constantly seeking happiness in all the wrong places. Yet you can discover from your own direct experience that happiness is what's natural, as you've been starting to see. Happiness is what's natural to each and every one of us, just by letting go of the thoughts and feelings and beliefs that conflict with it. And by recognizing directly that you are not the body-mind and all its problems. You are that which is aware of it. And the more you recognize that you are the awareness as opposed to the contents of awareness, happiness becomes boundless, because that awareness is you. And it's the source of happiness. It's the source of joy. It's the source of love. It's the source of beauty. And it is already who you are.
That's beautiful. I feel that like you're speaking my language. Obviously, my podcast is called Get What You Want.
Yes.
And my book is Get What You Want from Your Man. And I think that people look at that and they're just like, oh my gosh, who is this woman saying, these words, get what you want? And I think that kind of my goal of writing that first book was to have people that felt that they needed something more, that they needed to get what they wanted from their person to find happiness in that relationship. And what it's really about, and I'm kind of, telling my secret, which may make people not buy the book, but what it's really about is who we're being in any situation is how we create what we want in our life, right? So really it's, do you really want jewelry, a bigger ring, a new house? Do you really want all of these things? Or is it who you're being that creates what you really want, which is connection and love and fulfillment in yourself and in others? And so I love the word aware. I use that a lot. Being is also one of my favorite things. And so I'm really loving what you're speaking into right now, because this is really what I want my guests to experience, to figure out what it is that they truly want, not what they think they want.
Well, actually, there's a great question that people can use for that. And what you can do is ask yourself, what is my heart's deepest desire? And then what you can do from that is whatever comes to mind, this might seem radical, but whatever comes to mind, you let that go as best you can, and you keep going deeper. The deeper you get, the more authentic what you discover, until you get to a point that you start to live the happiness and be the happiness. And you also, the goals that are left are your true authentic goals. Many of us are living our parents' goals, society's goals, our spouse's goals, our friends' goals, our children's goals, but we're not really pursuing that which is most authentic to us. So if you explore that question, what is my heart's deepest desire? And you ask questions, follow-up questions, whatever the mind says in response to that, you can say, and if it's even deeper than that or beyond that, what is my heart's deepest desire? And you keep taking that deeper, and you'll find that things get less and less material and more real. And you'll find that there's certain material things that really are authentic to you, but it's a much better place to come from that which is authentic to you.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think that the world, there's so many distractions? I try to talk to my clients about that same thing, like, who are you? Not who you're being for someone else, not who you've been, not, who actually are you? And I feel like sometimes there's not enough silence or not enough, disconnection with all of our distractions of the world for people to truly understand what is inside. If you were to tell somebody, like, it's great to say, what is your deepest desire? But how would you have them apply that? Because I feel like a lot of times it's hard for people to just sit in the silence and really actually go through the feelings, the different layers and levels to find that, just that very deep desire of what they want. And where would you have someone start with that? I know I usually ask this at the end of the show, but I feel like it applies right now,
hey, let's flow where we flow. Yeah. Well, that's a good question. And we can spend a lot of time talking about that, because the Sedona method is a technique that shows you how to dissolve all those things that we run away from, how to dissolve all those things that appear to be causing us pain and suffering and a sense of distance and a sense of loneliness and a sense of incompleteness. All of that is unreal. It's not who you are. And because it's not who you are, you can let it go. The basic premise of the Sedona method is that feelings and thoughts and beliefs are just that. They're not facts, and you can let them go. And that what you are at your core is already whole, complete, and enough as it is, completely unlimited and joyous and still. And you can discover that from your own living experience. And we teach techniques that show you how to do that. So because you brought that up, let's dive into at least one of the techniques that we teach. Because whenever I do a podcast like this or interview on radio or TV, depending on the time, I try to give at least one tool that people can use immediately, even if they never look more into the Sedona method. Because I've used this work for 4.5 decades. And hundreds of thousands of people are doing it all over the world. So I don't want for anything. I don't need anything. Both because I've already achieved success for myself, but also because I live from that state of completeness and happiness. So it doesn't matter how much I give away in these interviews. I want people to have what I have. And so I think the good place to start is there's a technique that's also very similar to what Rhonda put in her book, because many of the teachers, including myself, in The Greatest Secret, Rhonda's latest book, talk about if you can discover that you're not the person, you are the awareness that's aware of the person and their life, which may sound weird, but it's very, very powerful to see that from your own living experience. And there's a set of simple questions. This is the Sedona method version. Rhonda changes one or two words in this. I think she changed it so it wouldn't be an exact copy. But again, I think it's her version of it because every teacher in The Secret asks similar questions. So the Greatest Secret. So here's the question. I'll tell you what it is. And then what I'll do is I'll take all of us through an exploration of this as a meditation or an exploration or an experiment. So people can really get a sense of what I'm talking about. So the question is very simple. Are you that? Referring to a pain in your body, a thought, a feeling, a belief, an idea, a story you have about yourself? Or are you that which is aware? And when you ask that question from your heart, as opposed to your head, something wonderful happens. The awareness that you are, which is always in the background, because you can't experience anything without awareness. Awareness is primary. Everything else that we experience is secondary. But when you start asking questions like this, the awareness that you are becomes more and more primary, and that transforms how you experience everything. And it makes everything more fun, easier, more joyous, more peaceful, more silent, even in the midst of activity. So let's do an exploration using that question.
Okay.
And I'm not going to be asking you this question. I'm asking your listeners and you at the same time. So I don't want to put you on the spot.
Oh, you're good. It's perfect.
So allow yourself to think of something in your life that you're wanting to change or improve. It could be a way you think, a way you feel, a way you experience life, or anything about your life in general, the story of your life. Now, as you focus on it, just notice whatever that brings up inside of you. It may bring up thoughts, feelings, ideas, pictures, memories, all of which we tend to identify with. Now check, as you focus on that, as you allow that, as you welcome that, check. Are you actually that? Or are you that which is aware? Now really look into your direct experience in this moment. I think you'll notice that you are the awareness. And even if you notice that only a little bit, whatever else you were just focusing on that seemed a little contracted starts to relax and open. So let's do that again. Wherever there's still any sense of remaining contraction within your body-mind, check. Are you that? Or are you that which is aware? See, each time you do that, it's more obvious, it's more relaxed, it's more open. So let's do that just one more time, because I want to make sure everyone listening gets a real sense of this. And you can do this on your own anytime, and you'll be amazed at how powerful this is. The more you recognize that you are that pure awareness, the more transformed you and your life become. So again, focus on any remaining contraction in your experience. And could you just welcome it or allow it? And then check. Are you actually that? Or are you that which is aware?
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah. As you see that you are the awareness, it puts everything in perspective. And you can actually live more and more as awareness, even when you're having a conversation, even when you're in your job or taking care of your family or commuting, if those of you who still commute, or whatever else you're doing. And the more you become aware of it, the more awareness is aware of itself. And that changes the whole dynamic in a very profound way.
Are you feeling stuck in your relationship? Do you feel you need more? Whether it be more time, attention, security, gifts, intimacy, or companionship, your partner is likely experiencing something similar. Yet both of you are not sure how to fix it. In Shirley Baldwin's best-selling book, Get What You Want From Your Man, she will show you how to get all of this and more. Get What You Want From Your Man is available nationwide through all major bookstores, Amazon.com, and through her website, www.getwhatyouwantguru.com.
I agree. I think it's so important to have awareness. And I think as you were doing that little meditation, it's present for me that a lot of people say they do things, right? And then they say, oh, this isn't me. I'm not usually like this, or I don't do this, or I don't understand why I'm acting this way because it's not me. I hear that a lot. And I think that just came to my mind when you were saying that, is that is something that you could use for that situation, because if they really believe that it's not them, then it should be really easy to believe that they're just being aware of how they're being in that moment, right?
Right. Well, again, it's more than just, it's beyond belief.
Mm-hmm.
I was on a recent interview and someone asked, what beliefs do you live by? And I said, I don't live by belief. When you hear something that you find really helpful, what we tend to do is, especially if we trust the source, we tend to just believe it and not prove it out for ourselves, not take that extra step to make it our living experience. Mm. And so what you can do with things that seem that you resonate with, you'll meet teachers, someone may read your book, for instance, and really resonate with it. And they may just start believing what you say, but they haven't really made it real for themselves. They haven't experimented with themselves and see how it applies in their lives. And so that's, of course, what you want. And so what I recommend to people is that they don't believe anything I say. They just stay open to it. And then they check it out in their own direct experience. Does this match what I'm experiencing? And people find that when they let go of the struggle, when they let go of the identification with suffering, everything works better. And it's natural. That's the beautiful part of this. Beingness or awareness is natural. All the other things that we're usually doing to distract ourselves from life or to lose ourselves in our drama or in our world are actually just distractions from that. And the more you pay attention to what's actually at your core, the more the light and the love and the peace and the joy and the happiness that you are shines forth.
That's beautiful. I really love that. As you're speaking, things come up for me. And what just came up for me with that was my son, who's 24, when he was 10, we were outside. He was running in the street playing basketball and he slipped and fell and he cut his knee open and he was bleeding and he just walked over to me. And I, as a mother and, remembering what my mom did and acting upon what I've always seen done, was just like panicking, you're bleeding, you're hurting, you're whatever was in that moment. And I remember him saying to me, Mom, pain is just another feeling. And I don't think that he even really understood it at that time.
Right.
But he wasn't going to allow pain to stop him from playing basketball. And that carried all the way through high school and college basketball. And I also have a daughter who was a collegiate gymnast, and it was the same thing. Like for them, pain was just part of their life. And I'm watching my daughter right now cope with a lot of things that most people would not cope with easily. Health issues, just a lot of different things. And to her, it's just another thing. It's just another thing to overcome. And she just like happily overcomes it. And so when you were telling me that, I remember like a lot of times when I went through natural childbirth, or when I went through things in life where I was able to use that mentality of pain being just another feeling. It's just another thing. We're just told that it is supposed to be bad. We're just told that it's, we're told that suffering is supposed to be suffering. Like the word comes with such a negative thing, where I've been able to most of the time just tack it on as another experience or another learning adventure, or, and so that's just something that came up for me when you were talking about that.
Well, that's great. That's great. Yeah. So again, what we talk about in this with the Sedona method and with work in the books and the audio programs and Rhonda's book, it's the reason that it's as powerful as it is because everyone knows this to be true on some level. They know they're not just a body and a mind. They know that the experiences come and go. They're not permanent. And they only have as much effect on us as we allow them to. In fact, you brought up pain. One of the ways to work on pain is to recognize that pain is just a label.
Right.
The suffering comes from the label, not from the sensation itself. Pain is actually just a strong sensation. It's the body letting us know that something needs to be corrected. Mm-hmm. And when you just notice it as a strong sensation, you stop comparing it to every other time you've experienced a similar sensation. And then the body-mind knows how to deal with it in a much more sane, open way, and it can disappear. It just dissolves. There still may be a strong sensation, but you're not experiencing it any longer as pain. And it sounds like both your children and you have already started to recognize that, which is beautiful.
Yeah, I think sometimes pain is what we need to go through to get to the next step or the next level. And so childbirth is one of those things where I think the pain, if I could allow myself to believe that this is good, like this is positive, because every amount of pain I have gets me closer to having this child, right? And so to be able to retrain your mind, and obviously I don't always have that mentality, but I do love, you hear no pain, no gain. And there's so much more of a meaning to that than just what people say. But what I wanted to ask you is, this past year has been just a crazy year, right? This pandemic, it's just something new for all of us. And I believe that there are so many people that have suffered or felt that they can't overcome this year, what they've gone through. Tell me how letting go, my listeners that are listening that are feeling this, how does the Sedona method and letting go, how can that help them to apply, like just starting today? What can they do?
Oh, well, that's a great question.
Of what we had to kind of like get rid of that, everything that they've had, so that they can start rebuilding again.
Oh, that's perfect. That's a perfect question. And you've probably heard the expression, because it's all over the web and the news every day: pandemic exhaustion, or some similar thing. And it's actually simpler than that. Whenever we feel like we have to do something, we must do something, we should do something, or if we can't do something, we're not supposed to do something, we shouldn't do it, it brings up a feeling within us of resistance. Mm-hmm. And when we resist, the things that we like the least is what persists. The Carl Jung, that's actually a quote from Carl Jung. What you resist persists. So anything in your mental state that you resist persists. And so what's been happening this past year is many of us have been resisting that we can't do the things we used to be able to do. Many of us have been resisting wearing masks or getting vaccinated or not going to the store or not hanging out with our friends or all the things that have changed. And fortunately, I think we're getting to the end of the pandemic. But that feeling of resistance is something that we all experience all the time, anytime we think we should or shouldn't, which we do to ourselves a lot. I actually call this shoulding on yourself.
That's what I call it too. Yep.
And so that feeling of resistance is something that's releasable. You can actually let it go. And then you can choose what to do or not to do, but without this pushback or reaction. So let's actually do a release on that, because I think that will help people right away.
That's perfect.
And it's something they can continue to do. And it will be helpful long after the pandemic is over, because every day, most of us have things that we should or shouldn't do. And so we resist that, and it becomes a tug of war, and it causes a lot of unnecessary suffering. And the other thing I found is that the more you let go of resistance, the more you discover this underlying flow and ease and acceptance, which is what's natural. So letting go of resistance is very powerful. I remember the first time I did this in, I think it was the early 80s, or maybe in the late 70s. I was taking a course that was focused, a Sedona method course that was focused on letting go of resistance. And my income during that course quadrupled. I was doing exactly the same things. And the only thing I did differently, I didn't do anything differently in my business. The only thing I did is I consciously was letting go of that feeling of resistance. So it's a very powerful thing to focus on. So just so we're clear what I'm talking about when I say resistance, resistance is a feeling of pushing back against whatever it is you feel you don't want. It's a feeling of moving forward with the brakes on. Mm-hmm. It's a feeling of a push-pull. And the good news is it's just a feeling. And when you let it go, you find that you feel more and more in charge, less and less the victim of whatever's happening. Instead of going against the flow, you let the river of life carry you. So let's do a process on releasing it.
Okay.
And this one's different than the one we did before. And I'm going to ask you these questions, and I recommend that people just answer them yes or no, and just avoid debate as best you can. The less you think about it, the more you'll experience it. So allow yourself to think of anything that you're resisting, something about what this last year has been about, the things that have changed, but anything in your life where you have the feeling of resisting it, not wanting it, saying no to it. That's a big part of resistance, the saying no to whatever it is inwardly. And then could you just welcome it? Allow it. Be present with it. And then as best you can, just for now, could you let it go? Just could you? Would you? When? So you may find that you let go a little on could you. You may find that you let go a little on would you. And you may find you let go a little on when, or you may save it all up for the when. But anyway, let's do that a couple more times. So again, focus on any remaining feeling of resistance you have towards anything. And could you just allow it? Welcome it. Be present with it. And then as best you can, just for now, could you let it go? Just could you? Would you? when. And let's do that one more time. Focus on that same thing or anything else that you feel resistance towards. And could you just be present or welcome or allow that feeling as best you can? And then as best you can, just for now, could you let it go? Just could you? Would you? When? Good. So you can use those questions on any uncomfortable or unwanted feeling, but they're very helpful to use around resistance. And don't let their simplicity fool you. I've had people use those 3 questions to let go of fears and phobias and long-standing feelings of guilt and anxiety and angst and anger, frustration, you name it, even deep grief. And those are just some of the beginning stages of the Sedona method.
So are these the things that you will find in your book?
Yes, it's in my book. Well, 2 books. And it's also in the free videos that we have on YouTube, on the Sedona Method channel. We give a lot of free material on our site as well, but definitely in our book and in our audio programs and in our seminars.
So I feel like normally at the end of my show, I ask if you can give my listeners something to apply today. And we've done that. More than that. That's been amazing. So tell me a little bit about the 3 books that I see in the background and the Sedona Method, Happiness is Free, and The Greatest Secret. Where can we find those? What is your website?
Sure.
How can my listeners find you?
Our website is sedona.com, but we also created a special page for your listeners, and it's sedona.com/what you want.
Awesome.
And that has information about our programs, but it also has links to the Sedona Method YouTube page, the Sedona Method Facebook page. On the YouTube page is over 200 videos.
Wow.
That teach people lots of techniques they can use to help themselves now. Our Facebook page, there are new quotes from myself and Lester every day, and also videos. And then the books, the Sedona Method book has been around for a long time. It's a New York Times bestseller. And Jack Canfield wrote the foreword to it because he's a big fan.
That's awesome.
And that teaches a good part of our work is right in the book. And you can get that wherever books are sold. And then the book I just re-released is called Happiness is Free, and it's easier than you think. And I re-released that book, and that has a bunch of material from Lester Levinson and myself. So it's both Lester and me. And Rhonda Byrne wrote the foreword to that book because she quoted Happiness is Free, I think about 65 times in The Greatest Secret, her latest book. And I also highly recommend Rhonda Byrne's latest book, The Greatest Secret. If you liked The Secret, you'll love this book as well, because it's really the next step. Holding in mind goodness and manifesting in your life helps move you from being the victim of life to more of the master of life. But there's something beyond that. When you recognize the true source of life, the true source of who or what you are, that brings a whole other level of freedom from suffering and unshakable happiness and peace and joy. So I recommend her book unequivocally. Unequivocally, I think I left a syllable out.
You get it.
But anyway, Rhonda's book is wonderful too. So, and all of Rhonda's book and my books are all available where books are sold.
Well, I feel so honored that you would be here with me today, and spending this time with you has been amazing. And I feel like I just got coached also, along with all of my listeners. So thank you so much. And I'm really grateful for you and for this time that we had together. And I also highly recommend those books. It sounds like you surround yourself with amazing people, and they also with you. And thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's totally my pleasure. I hope to talk to you again soon.
You will, for sure. Thank you, Hale.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to the Get What You Want podcast. If you loved it, please subscribe, share it with others, and leave me a review on Apple Podcast. You can also visit me on my website at www.getwhatyouwantguru.com. Would love to hear from you. Now go create.